I'm Amber Tresca, and this is About IBD. I'm a medical writer and patient educator who lives with a J-pouch due to ulcerative colitis. It's my mission to educate people living with Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis about their disease and to bring awareness to the patient journey. Welcome to episode 170. This is the first of a series of episodes that I'm calling Living Better with IBD. I'm bringing you the voices of experts from several disciplines who are going to teach you how to manage the business of life in the setting of a chronic illness. My guest is Lisa Zawrotny. Lisa is a productivity coach, the founder of Positively Productive Systems, and the creator and host of the Positively Living podcast. Lisa lives with chronic pain, and she was a caregiver for her mother, which is why I think she's the perfect person to teach us how to think better about organizing our lives. We explore the challenges faced by people living with a chronic illness like IBD and how to navigate the overwhelming demands of daily life. Lisa teaches us some practical strategies for decluttering both your physical and your mental space. And this is not just about how to organize a closet. It's about your mindset, setting intentions, and creating the systems that work for you, no matter your current circumstances. Lisa, thank you so much for coming on About IBD.
Oh, Amber, I am so delighted to be here to talk to you about, oh my God, all the stuff we're going to dig into today. And I'm just a fan of what you do. So thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to speak to you after listening to so many episodes of your show. I will admit to you that I am not really like a self-help type of listener, podcast listener. But your show I find so impactful and really helpful, especially the guests that you have, the nuggets that you come up with, and the realism of how you are framing productivity in the overall concept of actually having a real life and joy and all of this. So I'm so excited for my listeners to get a little bit of that in their ears from you today. And then hopefully they will pop over to your show. So I'd love to first get a level set from you and have you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your role as a productivity coach.
Well, thank you. So, hi, I'm Lisa. I'm a productivity coach. I'm the founder of Positively Productive Systems, host of the Positively Living podcast, which Amber just mentioned. And I am here to help you reduce your overwhelm, manage your stress, and design personalized systems. That's where the realism comes in. And I do it with compassion and humor, which is something you and I bond over extensively.
Yes.
And I'm advocating for those who think and feel differently, right? And who struggle with the standard productivity approach that's out there. Those are people who are neurodiverse and who have chronic illnesses and who are looking at the world, maybe having had trauma and grief impact them so deeply that they're like, how do you expect me to do this in the standard way? So my goal is shame-free productivity and for you to leave every conversation with me feeling hopeful and encouraged. And on a personal note, I live in the Finger Lakes area of New York State with my husband and my 2 teens and my 2 cats. And when I'm not doing this, podcasting and coaching and encouraging people, I'm walking my own talk and I'm hanging out with them. We do road trips and watch Marvel movies and play in a family band. Yes, we're like one band shy of the Partridge Family. And then when I need to have everyone leave me alone and hide out from the world, then what I want is a super cozy spot with a book and an iced coffee and probably a cat on my lap, because that's inevitable.
I love that. You just told me so many things that I have follow-up questions, but I want to get to the meat of this first.
Yes.
And then we'll circle back around to some of the things that you just told us about yourself, some of which I did not know, even after listening to so many episodes of your own show. One of the things that drew me to you, Lisa, was your backstory. I know it from listening to your show. And it is one of the reasons that I think that you are going to be so helpful for the audience that we're speaking to today, of people who live with chronic illness or people who are caregivers for people who live with chronic illness. So I wonder if you would share about your personal journey and what inspired you and what brought you to this work as a productivity coach.
I would love to do that because it is such an important driver, not only of the choices that I make now as a coach and as someone who tries to walk my own talk, but it's also the foundational point of why I am not like the other productivity coaches, right? But seriously, beyond the pick-me side of things, it's really more of can we get real? You mentioned it, and I love that. So that realness came from personal experience. And although I've had many traumatic and grief-laden experiences over the course of time, having helped my own mother be a caregiver for my father and things like that, the real turning point was being a caregiver for my mother. And she had Alzheimer's, and I cared for her it was about 5 years through the life cycle of this disease while pregnant twice and raising my children. So at one point, I was caring for her. I had an infant and a toddler. Ugh. And one of the things I don't even mention in this story, because I had been thinking about how you and I are going to be chatting today and about the idea of chronic illness. And although chronic illness is not something that I've experienced, to, I would say, an extreme point, I've had a lot of chronic pain, a lot of issues, herniations in my neck and back. And, it stayed with me for a very long time. I've been dealing with this for decades. And during that time when I was caring for her and caring for my kiddos, I'm trying to hold my child, and I can't because I have like so much numbness and tingling in my arms. And it was survival mode. It was complete and utter overwhelm. It was the beginning of experiencing migraines. It was no sleep and constant stress. Now, there were beautiful moments. There are moments that I'm thankful for. I'm thankful for the life lesson. It was a constant pressure every single day. And it was sheer exhaustion and like not just even being tired, but soul weary. And I think caregivers and people who are dealing with any kind of chronic issue know that feeling that I'm talking about. And when I was able to step out of it when she passed and I wasn't caring for her. And then at that point, caring for 2 small children almost felt, I'm not going to say light and breezy, but it felt significantly easier.
Yeah.
I took stock of what was going on. Well, part of it was, oh my gosh, what do I do now? And in that question, I realized that I had to clear a path to kind of get back to wherever I wanted to go, right? The whole thing, let's get back to normal or whatever that you have in your mind. And so I started to clear out. And this was what I now see as like whole life decluttering, like just taking stock of what I have, removing things that I hadn't dealt with. Because when you're in survival mode, you have to put a lot aside. And I know that if you're listening to this and you're listening to this podcast in particular, you get that. Because sometimes you just have to put life aside. You have to put the things that you're tending to aside. And I had so much that piled up on me that I started to process that little by little while still trying to heal, right? I was still in a lot of pain emotionally. There was grief. I realized like 6 months after she passed, I was like, oh, I haven't really properly grieved. I've just been in like this go mode. And I learned that I had to limit things. I was forced to limit things. And I thought, there's something to that. What if we looked at our lives in general in this way of simplifying and limiting and clearing out and dealing with fewer things and dealing with less? What if we did that regardless of what's happening? What kind of space could we create for ourselves? And that has been so helpful when life is good, when you're feeling well. But it's exceptionally important to keep you from feeling so far behind when life is rough, when you are dealing with pain and you are dealing with, extreme medical issues. So it was a discovery and an awareness of, so many of us are dealing with some kind of survival mode. Why aren't we talking about being productive and living well within that context? And the rest, as they say, is history. I helped people as a professional organizer, decluttering, getting that physical space involved. And I realized I have to dig deeper because it's the heart and the mind that connect to all this. And if we can get there first, we'll get there even faster. And that is the best nutshell I can offer in terms of what happened and why I'm here doing what I'm doing.
Right. That's absolutely perfect. And that is exactly what chronic illness brings to your life, is a sudden stoppage of everything except what absolutely needs to be done next. And hopefully you get to the point where you can come back and, focus on the things that you've had to leave behind. And with a condition like inflammatory bowel disease, which is relapsing and remitting, you cycle between periods of feeling well and not feeling well. And I think what I want to encourage people to do is be mindful of that time when you need to focus, you need to have like laser focus, can come on you again, and to be prepared for it so that it doesn't catch you so off guard. Because at diagnosis, it's just, I'm sure it was that way when your mother was diagnosed. It's just like all of a sudden everything stops. And you're just focused on the very next medical appointment, the very next treatment option, the very next, and then at a certain point, especially with little kids, it becomes, the very next, like when my kids were little, I said, whoever's crying gets the attention. Like, that's whoever's crying gets the attention. And then whoever else is not crying right now, you're going to have to wait. And that included me too. I was in the midst of that too,
So true.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's where I think you end up living with chronic illness. And so dealing with the stress and the clutter in the beginning of the year, especially, it's a great time. A lot of people use that to set an intention for the year, to maybe deal with some of these things. So I want to hear from you. What is it that your clients are bringing to you? What is getting in their way of helping them manage stress and clutter, and preventing them from being the productive person that they want to be?
All right. So two big things off the top of my head. And the first one is probably not one you're going to want to hear. So it's all the more important that I say it. So lean on in. Here we go with a takeaway. Here's your first big takeaway if you don't already have one for today, which is that one of the biggest issues I see is how much they put upon themselves, the perceived obligations and demands, right? We let so much of the world in, and especially now with the devices we have. And do not get me wrong, I love that I have Google in my pocket. And sorry if I set off anybody's device, but I love that I can research anything at a moment's notice. But also, it's too much. And then with that comes the perceptions that we have. And, we talk about this with social media and how we see highlight reels of everyone's life. And so many times, like probably 100% of my clients, when we sit down and we talk about the expectations, and we dig in and I say, but why does it have to be that way? It's we learn to let go of the how, we learn to let go of what the picture is, because it came from a source that isn't you, isn't your values, isn't what you're able to do, isn't what your family cares about. And getting to the bottom of that's a big block right there. And so if you think about it today, there must be something. And holiday season is a great example of that. I've seen that so much where it's like, oh, well, it has to look a certain way. It has to be this. We need to do that. This is a tradition. But do we? So that's the first one. And the second, right on the tail of that, the thing that I probably do the most, and even though there's definitely decluttering, there's definitely mindset work, but really it's prioritizing, because we get to this point where we feel like everything is urgent and important, and it's really not. So it's about getting real and letting go of expectations and understanding that there really is an order to what's important. You gave a great example, like who's crying?
Who's crying?
Yep. Because you have to put in order. You have to prioritize. And I do know that for my clients specifically, I see a struggle to prioritize because you're not seeing those distinctions. And that's what we talk about. But yeah, those are the two big things. There's probably plenty more we could talk about, but I feel like those hit home for what we're talking about today.
Yeah, definitely for me too, because I tend to be very literal and tend to be also a little black and white. There's all, in the middle, there's all that gray area. I don't have to
Yeah.
do things one way or another. I can do them differently on different days. And so I need to be reminded of that.
Love that.
So it's helpful. It is helpful for me to have somebody tell me that, which is at the basis of what you do and why it works, I think. Up next, how to set yourself up for success, even when you're fatigued. Living with chronic illness, and you've experienced chronic pain, there's this level of struggle because of limited energy. Mm-hmm. So what would you say? How can people focus when their energy is limited and they can only allot so much time or energy every day to focus on decluttering?
So this is a great example here where we're thinking about energy, okay, as more important than time management. You have so much time in the day, but you only have so much energy. So I think you're ahead of the game because you have a situation that has forced you to realize that.
Yeah.
Now, if you take that understanding that there are going to be these days where you are struggling. So there's a distinction between how do we declutter, how do we simplify to set ourselves up for success? And then also, how do we intentionally choose what we're doing depending upon the day?
Okay.
And so one of the things that I work with my clients a lot on is the idea that you may have multiple types of schedules or ways in which you'll tackle the day based on how you're feeling. And
right.
You need to have that flexibility. But if you have it intentionally laid out, and I've made this up because coaches tend to do that. I call it the generator principle. Okay, so this is what I'm calling it. Maybe it'll become a thing. But this idea that when you have a power outage and you use a generator, you don't power the entire house. You don't, like random room that nobody's in, have the lights on and what. No, you power the fridge and the heat and, lights in the room that you're going to be in. You limit. And you have that set. And sometimes there's even the electrical panels that are set up specifically to plug the generator in and then have this reduced area that's going to be powered that keeps you going. And it's that essential, right? The essential elements that you talked about. So think about what those are. Think about what the essential things are that you need to do. Or if you are working on decluttering because you're overwhelmed, think about the simplest way to do that. But let's finish the generator part and then I'll get into the decluttering. So the generator principle, you're proactively considering what's essential so that you can say, oh, I'm flaring today. This is what I'm doing. So it's almost like you have that maybe as you have a baseline that's much less than you maybe think you're supposed to do or intend to do or would like to do. But that's what you can handle. That's your baseline. And then you can have add-ons for the days that you're feeling good. That's something I work on with my clients all the time. And it's hard at first only because you have, again, these expectations of what you're supposed to be doing. If I say to you, have 3 tasks that you want to do in addition to the basic things that to keep the day running, to keep your life and your people running, it'd be like 3. What? Well, it's a magic number according to Schoolhouse Rock. So I do abide by that rule alone. But, you keep a lower amount. So that's one thing. Then when it comes to decluttering, if you're trying to get by, you're trying to sort of catch up, remove the excess, then the first thing we need to do, we need to define what clutter really is. Again, that goes back to expectations and obligations. And does it mean you have to have a completely clear counter? What's clutter to you? Peter Walsh has a great quote about clutter not just being the stuff on the floor, but anything that gets in between you and the life you want to live.
Yes.
So if you have that in mind, it's like, oh, it's a block. Well, then there are some things that other people might view as clutter. Doesn't matter. Another big takeaway for you there. It doesn't matter what they think.
Mm-hmm.
It matters what you and your family thinks. How are you living? How does it feel? So that's really important, engaging what you really need to tend to. Then you can start applying techniques in the professional organizer world. Not everybody's a fan of this phrase, but it's low-hanging fruit. I'm sure it's used in other industries as well, right?
Yeah.
But the idea of that is, what are some of the simplest things that you can do that'll get you the furthest? And you know, because you listen to my podcast, that I love to talk about the 80-20 principle, the Pareto principle.
Yep.
You can get 80% of the way wherever you're trying to go, right? With just 20% of input or effort. This is where you really, actually, I recommend every day you look for 80-20. I am going to find shortcuts wherever I can, no matter how good I'm feeling. But this is especially important when you are feeling low energy. What's the 80-20 here? We use it as a verb in my family. My kids all the time. I need you to 80-20 your room. Can you do that for me? Right? Okay. We're verbing it. Moms can verb anything.
Yeah.
I'll cook
100%.
you know.
Yeah.
Right. So what is it? Well, in the kitchen, it's close the cabinets and drawers, put away the dishes, or get the dishes into the sink, or whatever. Clear the table or clear a horizontal surface. I know in our living room, it's, fold up the blankets and, just double check some of the tables for dishes or whatever. When you have teens, dishes are everywhere. It's amazing. It's looking for the garbage or a way to tidy up or just simply, when you look at spaces in your life, figure out what belongs and what doesn't. That's a very simple way to get organized and to declutter, is to say, this space is reserved for fill in the blank. Our dining room is reserved for eating special meals and also doing puzzles, so it's like, but what is the space being used for and what belongs in there? And when you do that and you walk through and you're like, what's garbage? What doesn't belong? And straighten up a bit. When you do that, it's a huge difference. And then it'd be a huge difference to your psyche too, because you feel so much better walking through that space. But what I just described can potentially be very few steps, right? And then the other possible option, and I talk about decluttering quite a bit on the podcast and even have a playlist about it. But one of them that I wanted to bring up today, especially for when you have the lowest energy possible, and there's a longer term project, you have to look at it like, okay, I want to tackle this, but it's going to take me longer than most because I only have so many good days. You may want to consider something I call reverse decluttering. And what that means is actually you box up and remove as much as you can from a space, a room. It could be a cabinet, an entire room, a corner of a room, whatever you're dealing with, that you have a certain purpose for. You're not removing everything like you're getting rid of it or even going through it. You're actually boxing it up to go through as you're able. And only placing in that space or returning even what belongs. So those are my I would say biggest tips for when you're like, I'm in survival mode. I can barely function. Just to be aware of the energy and that generators only do portion. Know what is actual clutter versus you think you're supposed to, and then do really simple steps like low-hanging fruit or maybe reverse decluttering.
It's the reverse decluttering. It's so funny because there is someone in my life that I think wants to approach the situation using reverse decluttering. And as you're laying it out for me, and I didn't have that vocabulary to put it in that way with them.
Right.
I was kind of against it. Because I was a little bit like, if you are picking up things in order to like put them somewhere aside, can we not just make the decision right then? But that wasn't aligning with that person. And so we were kind of having a little issue there. So I think you just talked me into the benefits of that when I wasn't really seeing them before. So,
and that's a fair point. I absolutely agree when you're touching something, when you're making the decision, but in fairness too, when we're talking about really limited energy.
yes.
One of the biggest issues with decluttering is the fact that clutter is deferred decisions.
Yes.
And so that means you are making these decisions. And if you didn't make them before, if they were that easy to make, you would have made them. So sometimes you have to give yourself that breather, pack it up. And that's also why sometimes with decluttering, you've got, oh, I definitely know we're selling that. We're donating that. That's garbage. And then you have this set of stuff that like trips you up. And that's actually what I work with clients when we do like virtual organizing and decluttering is I'm like, the stuff you know, the stuff you're stuck on, that's what we're going to discuss. And we're going to make those decisions. But sometimes what you have to do, there's a term called maybe box, right? I'm not really sure. You box it up, you put a date on it, you set a date on your calendar and you're like, come on. And that's the whole, like, this happens when you move, right?
Yeah.
You look at a box, ask me how I know. And you're like, I haven't opened that in, let me see. It was 05, like, how old is this thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, I got to be real about this. Either bring it back out and I'm, playing cello again. I'm kidding. I've never touched a cello. But, it's like either, like who bowls in the family? There's a bowling ball here. What is this? Either you decide you make that your passion project and you dedicate yourself to it again or let it go, like Elsa said.
I love that. Oh gosh, this is so great. I'm just turning this into a coaching session for me. So anyway,
that works.
Well, there's another thing that people deal with though a lot. I deal with it as well, especially getting older, 51. And I always say I used to be smart, but that's the brain fog. And that comes, a lot of people with chronic illness deal with the brain fog. I think that's it's a very overarching term, and there's a lot of different things underneath that could be causing it. But I think functionally, it sometimes ends up where it is that deferred decision. You're unable to make a decision. Sometimes I find myself unable to decide what project to start next, things like that, just because you're just finding it difficult to focus on one thing at a time, which can happen for so many reasons.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you talk about is breaking bigger tasks into smaller steps. I think that's something that can help with brain fog. So I wonder if you would talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. And prior to that, I want to make sure that we've set the foundation for this. As you said, so many different reasons why we can have brain fog and what's going on. And the overwhelm that we feel can happen from having too much to do and or not knowing what to do next.
Yes.
And I just want to address one thing that I see that's a big trip up. Even before we worry about how we're breaking stuff down, how we're project planning, we need to be sure, again, like with the clutter, what really is meant to be done and meant to be done now, and how much we're holding in our brains. And so I'm a fan of David Allen's Getting Things Done, and I'm a fan of something called the Mind Sweep. You might have heard brain dump, but I want to encourage you, especially if you're prone to brain fog. And I mean, I'm at a certain age where we tend to be prone to that as well. And I again do this regularly too. You want to take what has your attention, what is distracting you, the mental clutter, and you want to put it in a safe space. Like when you go to clear out and declutter a closet, you don't just pull out one thing I don't recommend you pull out one thing at a time and look at it and decide. You bring everything out, right? You sort it and you figure out what's going on and how did that get in there? And that's where that was. And, all the other wonderful things that happen in decluttering. The same thing goes for your mind, especially if it's foggy, if it's the idea like it's an engine not running as well. You want to make sure that you have it set for success and set for focus. And one of the best ways to do that is to clear it out of all the, I'll remember that. And I don't need to write it down.
Famous last words of mine.
Famously. How did that work out for you? And I mean that with all the love. This is a face that doesn't judge, but also I'm judging a little because how did that work out for you? Ask me how I know. It doesn't. Or even if you do remember it, how much energy did you use? We forget how much energy is drained from mental capacity. Our prefrontal cortex, I think it is, that's making all those decisions. Metabolically, that uses more energy than any other part of our brain.
Wow.
Okay? So let's put it in a safe place in a trusted system. You start with a mind sweep. I've got free resources on that. Easy to do. In 5 minutes, you can declutter your brain. That's going to be step number 1 before we even talk about the nature of the tasks. Then it's what tasks really need to be done, and then breaking it down into smaller steps. And the way that you do that is by saying it's almost like a personal negotiation. Stop me if you've heard this before, but where you're on the couch, let's say, and you're like, oh, I can't even. I literally cannot with the laundry right now.
Yeah.
And then you're like, Lisa, all you have to do is get up and put it into the washer. That's it. That's all you have to do right now. Okay. It's like that self-negotiation. If you think about how you would negotiate with yourself, all I have to do is, and that's how you start practicing habits. Like for me, before I started walking regularly, doing walking workouts, my negotiation was 10 minutes. That's it. And at 10 minutes, even if you're watching a video and walking and it's a 25-minute video and you're planning to do it, you can stop at 10 minutes. That's all you need to do. That same technique that you use to start a habit and to keep going is the same thing you want to use for breaking down any kind of task or project. And it's thinking about those steps and allowing yourself. And I think the most important overarching concept here with anything we've talked about is do what you can and be okay with it, right? We get so caught up in this idea that, yes, I admit, when I'm talking about a full task loop, so to speak, that means you're closing the loop. And the more that we can close, the better off we are, the fewer issues we're going to have. So a task loop for laundry, let's say, is wash the laundry, dry, fold, put away, or hang up. But sometimes, just like with the reverse decluttering, yes, it may not be the ideal thing to do it in parts, but sometimes you need to. One thing that I will say is if you are going to do things in parts, in those smaller steps, have the steps listed, have a checklist. That's my recommendation. So there's a lot of different ways you can break down what steps are. I hesitate to say a specific way to do it because it has to be based on what you have the time and the energy for. But if you have a checklist, like you are sitting there negotiating with yourself, and then you say, okay, I'm going to do this. And then here are all the parts to doing this. And I only need to do the first 2 right now. And that's all I really have energy for. At least you'll have the list there, again, writing it down. And then you can go back. So you kind of know where you paused, just like when you pause a podcast episode and you're able to go right back to the spot, right? Netflix does this for us as well. This is where you were in the movie. Yay. Thank you. Because I couldn't remember.
Yeah. The mental load is overwhelming, and you do need to have a system. And even if you've been able to get through your life without one because you were operating on such a level that you could, if a chronic illness comes along, and it could be you, it could be a family member, whatever, you have to put these things into place because, and then you have to understand that you're going to have to be okay with doing things in a different way. That's huge. I think that's kind of almost the heart of really this conversation here is being okay with things being different or not looking maybe like you have always envisioned them. And then maybe you can get there, but maybe there's times when you just have to decide, okay, the laundry is washed and it's dried and it's in a basket, and that's what's going to happen. And if I go to change my sheets, then I have to go and get them out of the basket because they're not folded up and put away in the linen closet. That's okay. And that's how it's going to be for now.
Yeah, and sometimes celebrating that, oh, well, they're in the basket and, there's clean underwear for everyone. Sometimes you just got to be okay with that. And I think there's an important piece within that, what you're saying of being okay with it being different is not only different from others, different from expectations, but sometimes different than it was for you last week. And that can be
Yes.
really hard because there's so much. There's grief and shame, and it's complicated, right? Complicated
Mm-hmm.
emotions that come up with that. And saying, being open to this idea of what can I do today? And why should we celebrate this? Because I did something, because I was able, because I showed up, because look at what you're dealing with day in and day out, and you're still getting ish done.
Coming up, Lisa gives her advice on organizing your medical records. Lisa, I am very big on prevention in a lot of things. I think a little bit of planning ahead of time can bring you to a place where things are not going down a path that you don't want to go down. So I'm wondering what you tell people about how they can prevent from these things becoming overwhelming and cluttered and too many tasks on your plate in the first place.
I love that question so much. And I have multiple answers. I think we'll go with three. We'll keep it very straightforward. And one of them is a reminder of what we've already talked about, which is this idea of the generator principle, right? And kind of having that baseline, knowing what you can perhaps manage at your worst and understanding that, and then having other things be sort of add-ons or ad hoc as opposed to a given. The more that we create a baseline that's a little too high or a little too much of a stretch, the more likely we're going to end up having a day that's like at least how I used to play Tetris, where we keep getting faster and faster. It was like this just weird conglomeration of shapes just like stacking on top of each other. And it's like, and you just want to hit reset. So yeah, understanding that there's a lower baseline that you might not feel comfortable with, again, from expectations and feelings of self-worth, but trust that if you think about it, the lowest amount that you can do per day, if you did that consistently, 5 out of 7 days each week, and you kept doing it just like habits, just like anything else that has compound effect, that's a remarkable amount rather than burning yourself out and then being shut down for a week.
Right.
And it actually is even better than, even if you averaged out the same amount of time, it's even better than because of the compound effect. So that's number one. Then it's being mindful of what you're saying yes to and giving yourself some space. If you have a chronic illness, if you are dealing with anything that drains your energy, just sometimes equals motherhood, right? Be mindful of that every yes is a no to multiple no's, most likely. Sometimes a no to yourself, a no to what you're actually capable of in terms of the energy that you have. And then every no is also a yes. It's hard to say no to someone and no in a situation where you really want to help, but you don't have the capacity for it. And that, again, psychologically, it can be difficult, but think about how you want to show up for other people if you are a giver, and that fewer but better. It's an essentialism concept. Greg McKeown, I love that book. And it's less but better, that concept. And if you take that mantra with you, that's going to help, because when we talk about decluttering, when we talk about doing fewer things, simplifying, we not only have to say, what do we have like right in front of us? What are we removing, adjusting, but also what's coming in at us constantly every day. We have information, we have requests, we have demands, we have people who feel overwhelmed and they're just looking for help. And we have to have those boundaries to say, okay, here's what I'm going to allow in, and here's what I can say yes to. And sometimes it's, I would love to volunteer. I don't have the capacity right now. Please check with me again in the future. Say the words, let me get back to you. That's 6 words, right? Give yourself some space to pause, to consider what it really means, to consider, if you can, to cautiously say the slowest yes possible. Say your no's quickly, say your yeses very slowly so you know what you're saying yes to. And then the third thing that's on my mind for this is when you're setting up systems, right? Prevention, also means keeping in the habit of something. So let's say you have fewer things. You're working with a lower baseline, and then you're careful what you say yes to. The third thing is making sure to kind of reset yourself. And what I mean by that is I see a lot of trip up, especially with physical clutter, of not having the habit of setting your space back to neutral. And by that, I mean, as it sounds, kind of tidying up, resetting things, putting things away. Now, again, if you're in a flare up, you may not be able to. Hopefully, if you have help, you have a family, if you can do things together, you can do that. But again, it kind of goes back to what we talked about where there could be small little things, the 80-20 of it. The 80-20 of your desk is to put away some papers and close out your apps and, write a few notes for what you need to do in the morning. Boom, done. That doesn't need to take that long, but it can have long lasting effects. It was one client that I worked with where we did like a 10 or 15 minute close down for her business for the day. And the impact it had on her and her productivity. Because when you come in the next day, when you go into a kitchen to cook again and it's messy, right? Yeah. How does that feel? And that drains you even more. Like as if, like I always tell my kids, I'm like, my level of difficulty is high enough. You don't need to add to it. So don't do that to yourself. So wherever you can, have the practices in place, and they can be as little as 5 minutes and make a huge difference.
Yeah. I agree 100%. When I was a teenager, I remember somebody's dad, some friend's dad, said to us one time, make sure you're cleaning up this room, the playroom we were using or whatever at their house. Clean this up when you're finished. Don't just, be in here doing whatever and then leaving it. He's like, you clean this up now. The next time you guys come in here to play a game or do whatever you're going to do, it's going to be amazing. Because you're going to have this nice space and you can come in and do what you like, and that had I'd never thought about it that way before. And it had such a profound impact upon me, especially with the kitchen. Oh my gosh. The kitchen has like, you prepare a meal, part of it is cleaning up. You got to clean up afterwards. I don't want to come in there and have to clean and then cook a meal. So I think though, maybe you also have to be a little bit okay with not everything gets done perfectly when you're flaring, but for sure, trying to add that little 5-10 minutes, close out your day, close out your task, do that 80-20 on that task. I think that makes so much sense. Yeah. Now, people who live with IBD, people who live with chronic illness, Lisa, you are going to be, aware of this on a whole other level after your journey as a caregiver for your mother. There's a ton of administrative tasks, appointments, paperwork, billing, keeping on top of prior authorizations, like all of these different things. Do you have any broad advice for people who are dealing with this and trying to stay on top of all of that while they're trying to do all these other things in their life?
So there's a lot to it. And, I've definitely worked with clients and dealt with it myself, as you know, but it sounds so simple, but I will say it nonetheless, because I think it's so important, is having a dedicated notebook. And it could be per person. It could be per medical issue, whatever makes sense, depending upon what you're dealing with. But one of the things that I love to explore as a productivity coach, different methods and things like that. And the bullet journal was a big thing. But you talk about like, ain't nobody got time for that. Like, you don't have the energy for it. Like, I didn't want to do it in the traditional way. But the concept of a journal, to be able to write down things per day, one of the simplest ways I ever did a bullet journal. And I continue this practice now, except that I do it in a Rocket book. So I'm not using as much paper. I will still use journals for actual journaling, whole different thing. But what I'm talking about is dedicated medical notebooks where you have in chronological order, because you're noting per day what's going on. This is great for, and you could also wrap this into a planner if you have enough space per day on a planner. You could do that. I've practiced gratitude in my planners. I've written down details about like calls that I've made. So you could wrap that up So either that or a dedicated notebook where you are noting symptoms per day and how you're feeling. This was especially important as a caregiver because I would note what was going on with my mom, how she was acting, how she was reacting to medication, et cetera. And I could go right to the day of when that was happening. And basically having a way to write everything down because you're also making a call to a provider and you are getting a confirmation number or a referral number, and you can write that in that space. And so then it's just a matter of flipping back to be like, I called on December 3rd and here's the referral number and I have it right there. And, you can also keep it in a file, but it's a simple concept. Again, it's the write it down kind of advice, but it's writing it down in a dedicated space because one of the worst things is when you're like, oh, I think I wrote it on that invoice. I think I wrote it down on a Post-it note. I think it might be on the whiteboard on the fridge. I'm not sure. Maybe the advice is technically one space.
One space.
Right? One space. Then the other thing that you want to do is you want to capture as much as possible when things are happening. And that's a general productivity approach that I recommend. And it's the first step in David Allen's Getting Things Done system. And that's the mind sweep idea. So you're thinking about all the things you have to do. It is you get it, you're driving and you stop at the store and you get a call from the doctor's office. And you're like, so I have a notes on my phone, and I have one dedicated general note that I keep, that's labeled each month, where I will write down the date and time of something that happened while I was out and about. And it's a capture in one spot. Now, what you need to do with that is at least once a week, you need to be like, what the heck did I write down here?
Yeah.
And did I do what I needed to do with it? It's either, that just needs to go in my files, or I need to make a phone call, or that has to go on the calendar or whatever. But again, I guess it's a similar idea, one spot, right? Where you can capture from everything that happens. And then the third thing I would say is to automate and set notifications wherever you can.
Right.
So when it comes to billing, again, this is, of course, with consideration of budget and accuracy. But there are some regular billing, regular prescription renewals and things like that you can probably comfortably put in an automated sequence so that it's being taken care of for you. And then if not, you set reminders. So I'm still dealing with medications. I'm technically in a milder secondary caregiver situation with one of my in-laws now. And so I also take care of medications for my kids and things like that. And so the ones that we can automate and have on automatic renewal, done. And the ones that I can't, I have set reminders in a system so that it pops up and it's like, it is time to call the doctor, to have them call it into the pharmacy. Those would be my three things that it's not going to take the work away from you, but it will take the worry away that you are forgetting something or can't find what you need.
Yeah, that's perfect. That makes so much sense. I think I gave up on planners when none of those planners worked for me.
Oh, that's another story for another day. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
But what I found an undated planner, and that actually works for me. So when there's something that needs to be recorded on that day, I use it for that day. And then if I don't have anything the next day, I don't need to worry about.
I use so much digitally now that I was like,
Yeah.
I need to keep that, but then I need a place that I can capture the in-between stuff, the processing stuff. So that's where the notebook comes in. And for me personally, like I said, I moved to a Rocket book so that I can write it down and then, save the PDF and then erase it and move on. But the bullet journal did work. I did that for quite some time. And again, don't be afraid to try something and then say, if it's not working, it's okay. Let it go and move on. That's a big thing I do with clients, is really helping them. It's like a matchmaker kind of thing. It's like, I know everybody else says use a planner, but this is why. Here are the following reasons it will not work for you. Let's not waste precious time.
Right. Trying to make you use a system that just doesn't align with your needs and your goals. Like, that's not helpful at all.
Biggest pet peeve of mine. Yeah. That's a soapbox I will stand on till the end of time if you let me.
And to your point, that's a great segue into thinking about the idea of not being able to do it all. We are constantly bombarded with people that look like they are doing it all. They have it all. They're there's social media influencers that look like they live in big empty houses with nothing in them, and it just doesn't look real. How do we bring that back to ourselves and say, that's not reality, and we need to be okay with what we can do in that particular day and letting go of the rest of it and stop comparing?
It is a challenge, I know, and especially because we're like, listen, I've had a rough day and I want to scroll cat videos. Oh,
Yeah.
wait, that might be me, but and then you're like, and in between the cat videos, I'm seeing, the influencers with the supposedly perfect lives and the things like that. And then even just honestly, and I say this with all the love, as a productivity coach, literally, this is my expertise and I love it. And I watch type A people just go to town like the Energizer Rabbit. That is a very old reference. Thank you very much. Who's that? Who do you mean? I just mean like a whirling. No, I can't say that either. I don't even know what a current example of this would be. It's like how Tyler, the Creator, does songs. It's like every 5 seconds they're doing something. I am fascinated by this.
Me too.
And all I can say is kudos to them, to each his own. But here's the big thing. Finding peace may be easier when we realize that by looking at what someone else is doing and saying, am I supposed to be doing that? I wish I could do that. Why am I not doing that? All of those questions that we naturally ask are actually energy drains, and we can't afford that. There's a phrase, really old school, but I still love it and it still works. And it was something said to me in school ages ago. You're doing a test, eyes on your own paper. Right. And the grass that's greener is the one that's watered, right? We pick a mantra. But the biggest thing is it's taking a lot of your energy and it's draining even more that you can ill afford by comparing. And then I would say, take a cue from a questioner, which I am, and maybe ask the question, they're doing these things and it looks impressive as anything, right? But what if the perception of doing it all is mistaken? What if they're wrong about that? What if they are missing something key? Like, even if you have the energy to do it, what are you missing? The space within our lives that we don't fill with stuff, with things, with tasks, with, objects isn't empty. It's opportunity. It's not just that, we're comparing and we're not able to do what they do, but maybe we're not meant to. What if what's expected is actually wasteful? I will give you those questions to ponder the next time you see someone doing something where you think, I wish I could be doing that too. I will tell you that some of the most difficult things we've gone through, the hardships in our lives that I didn't want to have for the sake of my children, have actually helped shape them into really wonderful, empathetic, compassionate, creative individuals. Don't be afraid of that.
Oh, that's amazing. I love that so much. And living a life within your own capacity, which is something that we talk about a lot on this show. And it has been a hard thing to come, for me personally, to come around to, is to make peace with what my actual capacity is.
I work on it every day myself.
That's good to hear. Stay tuned to hear why Lisa says we should celebrate every success. We're also wanting to celebrate successes. That is a big foundation of your work and what you talk about on your show. You have suggestions? How do you recommend people celebrate their wins?
So the recommendation about celebrating your wins is actually also advice that threads through our entire conversation here. And I would say, do what energizes you. So if you're an extrovert, find people to share it with. If you love words of affirmation, find a buddy or, your spouse, if they're willing, who will go ahead and tell you how amazing you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Listen, message me. I'll help, be like, I totally did the laundry today. But in all seriousness, people send me their decluttering projects all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. And I love it. I love it. So yeah, message me, message someone that you know. I have a biz bestie and we're constantly messaging and I'm like, I totally showered today. I mean,
Yes.
right? So whether it's personal and intimate, or if it's like a group of people, get on Facebook and a group of other moms. I'm sure that you're probably in a group, with other people who experience the same chronic illness and they're dealing with it, and just totally put it out there. Keep it real. If you find inspiration in encouraging them, when I just told you that I work on that mindset every day and being okay with what I'm limited by, and you're like, oh, thank you. That feels good. Maybe you feel inspired by inspiring others. Whatever energizes you, do that thing. But most importantly, there is nothing too small to celebrate.
I love that. Back to the laundry again. I do have an accountability partner that we will every so often text one another. Do you have laundry in the machine right now?
I think that is wise because also
very funny.
And my mind is immediately like, do I better
I don't even know how it started, but every so often we will text one another that. And sometimes the answer is, yeah, I do have laundry in the washing machine right now.
I will add one thing. If for any reason, like chatting with someone else, messaging someone or whatever, if for any reason that's not an option for you right now, you don't feel like you have someone that you can, or you're just feeling extremely private, because sometimes I know I go inside myself when I'm really hurting.
Yeah.
I would encourage you to journal in any way, even if it's 3 sentences a day or something, really small amounts. One of the reasons that I mention that specifically, especially when it comes to celebrating, and sometimes celebrating is, I survived. I got through the day.
Yeah.
I managed with a lot of pain and discomfort and awkwardness, and I helped someone else because they're going through the same thing, or I got through. Whatever it is that you're celebrating, write that down, because when you go to review journal entries, when you go to review something like gratitude and a gratitude practice, you can actually experience those things again. Your mind doesn't distinguish the timeline of it. You feel it again, and you can be reminded of how strong you were in this moment. It's so easy for us to forget what we went through. Thank you for giving me a place to share my story and the hardships I went through, because sometimes it's easy for me to be like, yeah, whatever. And then I stop for a moment and I'm like, holy bleep. I went through a lot. And look at me. I survived and I'm trying to do something good with it. So I would encourage you, even if you're sharing it with yourself, celebrate it.
I love that. I love it. Well, Lisa, I can't let you go. You opened up the door to a couple of things, so I can't let you go. All right. So you and the fam are into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Do you have a favorite?
You cannot ask a multi-passionate about favorites. It really hurts my heart. My gosh, I adore the Avengers so much. Favorite, maybe Captain Marvel, but I don't know. That's a lot of pressure, because we enjoy all of them. Anything with Iron Man makes me very happy.
Same.
Yeah. Okay. I'm
We're gonna go with Iron Man.
Yes, I am going anything with Iron Man. Thank you.
So totally on board with that. And Captain Marvel. Yeah, which was not a comic book reader. So watching the movies and being exposed to all of that, and just learning that there was a character, Captain Marvel, that was so amazing and so powerful. I just loved it. And then Iron Man. I mean, come on. what's not to love?
Right?
I mean, he's kind of a jerk, but we love that too. We can maybe overlook it.
He had his moments. No spoiler alert. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely had his moments. And then I also wanted to ask you about, you have a family band? Like what? Explain.
Okay. Yeah. So that's the oversimplified version.
Okay.
But so we have, so my husband is very musical, used to be in a band, and my eldest son is incredibly musical. I'm also very musical. Instruments, singing, you name it. Music's a huge part of my life, always has been. And my husband and my eldest had wanted to put a band together to give my son more opportunities to play. But we started this band together, and I wasn't even supposed to be part of it. But apparently they liked a lot of 80s tunes. And my husband was like, yeah, I can't reach those notes. And so the drummer was like, well, could Lisa do it? So I ended up, as one of the singers. But it's been a really great experience on so many levels. It's fun to play and perform music. It's amazing to be able to have that kind of bond and activity with my son, especially because he's at the age right now, he's almost 17, where I'm supposed to be an idiot and I know nothing, right? But instead, there's still some respect, but he's exceptional and it's super fun. And it is definitely a stress reliever for me. I'm a big proponent of music. I think it's incredible for our mental health, and thanks for asking about it, because I love it.
Oh, it's fabulous. Anyway, so Lisa, we've talked so much about many things that are really important to my community, and I think people are going to want to talk to you, and they're going to want to listen to you. So where can people find you? Where can they find your show? And where can they find you on the interwebs?
Right, so the main hub for all the things would be positivelyproductive.com. You are listening to an amazing podcast, so you could hop right on over to the Positively Living podcast. I would love to see you there. If you just want to hang out and watch ridiculous reels that I do because they're fun and because laughter is stress management and we need that, please find me on Instagram, positively_Lisa. And anywhere you find me, please do message me. Let me know that you heard me here and you wanted to connect. I would love to hear from you.
Thank you. And I also want to plug, you have an amazing amount of resources on your website that are available to people that they can dig into right now.
Like the Mind Sweep that we talked about. Yeah, absolutely. Lots of stuff.
Lots of great stuff there. And I just love it. Lisa, it has been such a joy. I have enjoyed your show so very much. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing, for helping people with these really difficult tasks. And then thank you so much for actually speaking with me and saying yes to me, because I know that means that you've probably had to say no to something else.
Ooh. I am already so delighted. Love talking with you. So happy to say yes. So honored to be here and loving what you're doing. And I see what you did there. I see what you did there. I appreciate that. Yes. It was yes to some things, no to others, but I'm so glad that I said yes to this. Thank you, Amber.
Hey, super listener. Thanks to Lisa Zawrotny for sharing her journey from caregiver to productivity coach. I wholeheartedly recommend her podcast, which is called Positively Living. Wherever you are listening to this show, you can find Positively Living. She has 250 episodes for you to browse through, and I know you will find some that are helpful to you. You will not find a more sincere cheerleader for you as you navigate all the ups and downs of chronic illness. You can also visit positivelyproductive.com for tools, resources, and information on how you can work with Lisa one-on-one. Also, thanks to Connecting to Cure for sponsoring this episode. Connecting to Cure is a nonprofit whose mission is to connect and support the inflammatory bowel disease community, accelerate research, and amplify awareness of Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. You can find them at connectingtocure.org. And I am so grateful for their support. As always, links to a written transcript, everyone's social media handles, and more information on the topics we discussed is in the show notes and on my episode 170 page on aboutibd.com. Thanks for listening. And remember, until next time, I want you to know more about IBD. About IBD is a production of Mal and Tal Enterprises. It is edited, written, produced, and directed by me, Amber Tresca. Mix and sound design is by Mac Cooney. Theme music is from Cooney Studio. All right, so I did turn the recording on.
Yeah, so tell me again how much you love my show.
I love your show. You want me to do an ad, you want a mid-roll ad?
Yes.
Or like a testimonial? I will 100% do that.